With that, I'd like to introduce my partner and the co-founder and managing partner of TTB Capital, Gardiner Garrard, who's going to introduce our Lifetime Achievement Award winner. Thank you.
All right then. Good afternoon. Before I get started, I want to recognize a few folks here. Phil's brought two daughters, Beth and JJ. Can you stand up and raise your hand for me? Sorry to embarrass you, and he's brought his son-in-law, Paul. Okay. I want to start, everybody in the room knows TSYS, I know that. But I want to just start with a few fun facts. They have over 600 million cards on file now. And I got this hot off the press this morning. They're now processing right at 48 million transactions a day. And last year in 2014, processed over $1 trillion in dollar volume. And they're now over $2 billion in revenues and roughly 10,000 employees. And Phil, who I've known my whole life, is way too humble to ever admit this, but there's no individual on the planet that has more to do with TSYS achieving those feats than Phil Tomlinson. I grew up in Columbus, so I had the honor of knowing him since I was a little kid, and TSYS is a big deal in this room and really anywhere because it's a good, big company, but if you live in Columbus, Georgia, it's a really big deal. And it was almost impossible for me not to look up to Phil as one of the leaders of TSYS. He was the CEO for 10 years. He worked at TSYS for 40 years. And when I think about Phil and my image of him is one that's a high integrity, humble, strong leader. And I've had the privilege to work with him in a couple capacities. One as a former board member at the Georgia Economic Development Board, and I've seen firsthand how committed Phil is to the state of Georgia. But also, many of you probably don't know this, but Phil is one of the silent, behind-the-scenes patriarchs of TTB Capital. He's been one of our strongest supporters for 15 years. He's been on our advisory board and has also been one of our largest investors through TSYS. So I'm personally very honored to have the opportunity to come up here and talk about him. He's one of my favorite people. But I didn't want to be too selfish about it. I actually thought it would be worth reaching out to some other folks in the TSYS family to get some feedback. And I just want to share with you some quotes or some comments that I got, as well as some stories that I've heard about Phil. Some I knew, some were new to me. The first one, most of them I'm just going to let be anonymous, but the first one I want to tell you who said this because he's a former recipient of this award, and that was from Jim Blanchard. And here's what Jim Blanchard had to say about Phil Tomlinson. Phil is perhaps the greatest relationship developer I've ever known. People love to do business with him. Phil Tomlinson's life is based on his relationship with God, his values which demonstrate integrity, persistence, loyalty, hard work, empathy for others, and a servant's heart. When people discuss traditional values, they are defining Phil's value system and worldview. Without a doubt, Phil Tomlinson is among the greatest leaders of the state of Georgia ever, and his life of accomplishments is the living proof. I think that's very well said, and you know, my other thing that I've experienced with Phil firsthand is that not only is he such a high integrity guy, but he's also a very steady hand, and you just have to kind of get into a mix with him or a bind with him to see what I'm talking about. But I can remember in the financial crisis one time talking to him, and I was running all over the place, and you know, Phil was still optimistic and positive. It's like, oh, it's going to be all right. And I got this quote, and it's from another direct report of his. It says, "The thing that always impressed me about dealing with Phil was his incredible optimism and being so incredibly cool when things looked darkest. Everyone else could be running around with their hair ablaze, but he was cool and composed." So he's a high integrity, humble, high valued, cool cucumber. But I would be remiss not to tell you one other thing about Phil, or maybe two more things, but he's a salesman. And anybody you talk to will tell you this about him. One director sent me an email saying, Phil Tomlinson's the best salesperson I've ever known. He never stops thinking about ways to expand TSYS and grow their business. And when I got this, I was reminded of a story I'd heard before about Phil on a duck hunt one time. And he was on a social duck hunt with some friends, went down to Arkansas hunting, and I think they stayed up late. And anyway, they got woken up early, I mean like 4 in the morning early, and they got shuffled into this van with some other guests that were staying at the same lodge that they didn't know. And the story goes, it's dark in the van and everybody's kind of tired, and next thing they know, somehow or another, Phil discovers that one of these other guests in this van works for a bank that TSYS has on their radar as a potential customer. And without missing a beat, he goes into a full sales pitch there at 4:30 in the morning, talking all about TSYS. And I can tell you without any doubt that it's that tenacity and that compassion for growing TSYS that resulted in those fun facts that I started with, that 48 million transactions a day, that 600 cards on file. It's because of this man right here and his passion for selling and promoting TSYS. And, all those things are business accomplishments, so I want to leave you with one last little thing about what a big heart this man has. And I'm going to share 2 stories I got from employees at TSYS that represents this. The first goes like this. There was a time when a team member dealing with her husband's terminal illness was concerned about her job because of the amount of time she had to take off to care for him. Phil did not know this employee personally, but when he heard that she was worried, he immediately called her manager to make sure we were, quote, doing the right thing and, quote, taking care of her. He also told the manager to tell her to take as much time as she needed and to not worry about her position with TSYS. I got one more from another employee, and I literally had dozens of these stories to choose from. And by the way, I got all this in 24 hours. I sent out 3 or 4 emails, and I can't tell you how many I got back. People were so eager to just share their love and appreciation for Phil. Here's the last one. Phil cares about others. He has never forgotten his own struggles when he was a young man. He once looked out the window at our maintenance crew and said, "There, by the grace of God, go I." He treats everyone with the same care and respect, and I believe it's the reason he is so well thought of, not only at TSYS, but in our community and our industry as well. So Phil Tomlinson has done a lot for me personally. He's certainly done a lot for all the folks that have ever worked at TSYS. He's done a lot for my hometown of Columbus, Georgia. But I am quite certain, and I think most of you are as well, that he has been one of the driving forces in the expansion and the success of the fintech ecosystem here in the state of Georgia. So I think it's very suitable and appropriate that today, Phil, we award you with the Lifetime Achievement and Financial Technology Award from TAG. So if you would, please come on up and we'll present you with your award.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here, you can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, about the...
Listen, keep the music playing and we'll open the bar up. First of all, can I get a copy of that quote from Blanchard? Because I know that when I reported to him, he never said anything like that to me. And Gardner's over 700 million accounts now, not 600. There's close to 800 million accounts at TSYS. He introduced my 2 beautiful daughters. I've got 3 gorgeous daughters. I wasn't sure I was going to make it this morning for 2 reasons. One, I'm pretty well retired now, and I quail hunted all day yesterday on horseback, and I almost couldn't get out of bed this morning. I almost couldn't get in the car this morning. I almost couldn't get out of the car up here. But I had my senior granddaughter had her senior speech at high school this morning, and I said, no matter what, I'm going to that, and I'm happy to report that she just did a fabulous job, and I was so proud of her. Gardiner, I really appreciate all those things that you said. As you've heard before, I was looking around to see who he was really talking about. I was really looking at the TSYS table, and they were grinning at each other and laughing like, where'd all that come from? But I hate that my wife couldn't be here. She is with my granddaughter at lunch, and I think she's got her priorities right. I told her, I said, today is a big day for me. I had my granddaughter's senior speech, this award today, which I'm deeply appreciate, and then tonight in Columbus, they're inducting me into the Hall of Fame of the Boys and Girls Club, which I've been involved in for years. And I told my wife this morning, I said, baby, you can tell that I'm getting old and I've retired when you get a Lifetime Achievement Award and you get inducted into the Hall of Fame all in one day. I've got to try to stay busy, but thank you. Tino, thank you. I hadn't seen you. I did see Sean this morning and talked to him a few minutes. Of course, I want to thank my daughters and son-in-law for being here with me this morning. It's interesting because I can remember back not too many years ago that if we had had a Technology Association of Georgia meeting, we would have had it in a hotel room, and the bar would have been open for 24 hours. It was a rough crowd growing up with very young. But it's amazing to me what has happened in the state of Georgia in the payments business. It's just incredible how many people we employ in this state. And we've become a very, very important industry to this state and really to the southeastern region. I don't know the numbers. I'm sure somebody in here has added it up. But when you take all the payments companies in the state of Georgia and annualize it, it is a huge percentage of what goes on in this world. I've got a few notes here. I'm not going to take a long time. I'm one of the few people who actually moved from Atlanta to Columbus to be in the payments business. And we moved from Atlanta in '74. We lived out in Sandy Springs. That was when Georgia 400 stopped at Northside, and nobody knew what was going to happen to it. We all just used to laugh about Georgia 400 was absolutely the road to nowhere. I mean, there was nothing out there. And it's amazing what's happened in Atlanta. I was thinking back this morning, we started TSYS really as a part of Columbus Bank and Trust Company in 1974. When I went to the bank, we had 18,000 credit card accounts, and they were grooming me to head that operation. And we sort of slipped into the processing business somewhat accidentally, and with Landmark Union Bank down in St. Petersburg, Florida. And it's pretty interesting that a bank that size would have the nerve to let us go do what we really wanted to do for so long. And I have to give the bank just an amazing amount of credit for that. Just did a great job. TSYS today operates in 13 countries, have operations in 13 countries. We have customers in 86 countries and over 10,000 team members. We do business with 8 of the top 10 banks in the world, 8 of the top 10 in the U.S., half of the top 20 issuing banks in the world are customers of TSYS. And it just astounds me that we have all these mega banks coming to little old Columbus, Georgia, because I can tell you that conventional wisdom over the years was always, Phil, you guys have got to move. You'll never make it in Columbus. And we've got quite a few people here in Atlanta now with a operation out in Alpharetta and one in Kennesaw, and so we're proud members of the Atlanta community. But it's pretty interesting. I think we do about 49 million transactions every day, and that's before we just converted the Bank of America portfolio a couple of weeks ago. We're the 7th largest merchant acquiring company in the country by outlets, and we're now, after the acquisition of NetSpend, we're the 2nd largest general purpose reloadable card company really in the world. And so combined, we're a public company, S&P 500, pushing $7 billion in market cap, and it's been really an amazing ride, and I am thrilled to have been able to be a part of it. But I'll tell you this, and I saw it again with the Bank of America conversion. We've got several people at the table over here that were deeply involved in that. We have something that I've never been able to describe it other than our secret sauce, but we have this wonderful work ethic at TSYS where people want to do the right thing for their peers, and they really want to do the right thing for our customer base. And it's just so exciting to be a part of that. And I think we've really done a good job with that. I look here today in Atlanta and I see Global and First Data and Elevon and Payscape. The names just go on and on and on. And it's just really fulfilling to see what has happened to this industry during my career, particularly in the state of Georgia. We've seen a lot of companies come and go, and we've seen the really good ones flourish, the ones who were devoted to excellence. And so I would encourage all of you that are with young companies to make sure that you keep the customer in mind and you devote yourself to excellence. But you also have to devote yourself to making a profit, because at the end of the day, that's what makes a difference. I want to thank everybody today. You scared me, Gardiner, when you said a lot of stories that you had. There's a lot of stories that I wouldn't want to be told with my 2 daughters sitting here. They probably heard most of them, but they probably haven't heard all of them. But anyway, I would like to. I'm deeply honored to be here today. I really appreciate you thinking of me, and I appreciate the award more than you know. And I promise you, in my study, it's going to go in a really special spot. So, thank you again.